often things are sounding similar based on how each of you are speaking. So what's the difference?
Well, sincerity, for one. Mr. Carney opposed all of these policies for 10 years as part of the Liberal government.
Is the fix in? A lot of people are thinking so after Mark Carney had a slip-up that has people kind of questioning this election. A reporter also tried to shame the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre, but unfortunately, he was just a lot smarter than her when she tried to do this. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, like, comment, follow on other social media platforms as well. We're going to be talking tariffs, the meltdowns, and some hope. But first and foremost, here is a wonderful message from one of my favorite U.S. senators, Mr. Kennedy.
I made this suggestion to the new Prime Minister of Canada the other day, Prime Minister Carney. I'm going to make it again. And I hope this time he'll take it more seriously. Remember, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to act seriously. If you want respect, you have to act respectfully. Prime Minister Carney, you say that President Trump is not a fair trader. And I understand your point of view. I don't agree with you, but I understand your point of view. You've got to stand up for your people. If Prime Minister Carney, if you believe in free trade, then here's what you do. Make this offer today. Offer to go to zero tariffs in Canada. There's a way to stop this trade war. It's just to remove the tariffs on both sides. Remember what Mama Gump said? Stupid is as stupid does. Let's don't be stupid. Let's don't have a trade war. Let's continue to be friends.
I'm going to speculate a tad here, and certainly there are pros and cons to free trade between Canada and the USA. There's a lot of reasons why we have certain tariffs and whatnot. There's a lot to unpack there. But, you know, as a whole, Mark Carney does not seem to be somebody who is even in the slightest open to the idea of free trade, which could explain his response to all of this, which we'll get to in a second. But Mark Carney, by all definitions, appears to perfectly fit the role of somebody who is a neoliberal technocrat. A technocrat, just in case you're unfamiliar, is somebody who is not elected at all, but yet they're incredibly powerful. And so you have that with so many of Mark Carney's investments, the chairs that he has sat on, the vice chairs of certain boards. He has had a lot of influence, and none of those roles, not one, was earned through an election. Yet somehow he has managed to be a driving force behind shaping global financial systems, shaping climate rules, climate finance rules, and also public policy narratives that have been implemented that they're still feeling as well in the UK. There's been a lot of reports about this, and that we have felt here in Canada as well. He has had a lot of influence on public policy and how things are going to look for us in the future based on a stacked resume, which apparently is a good thing. In this case, I would argue that it's not.
Opposed all of these policies for 10 years as part of the Liberal government. I mean, look, he advised Trudeau to print money and run up huge deficits that drove inflation. He opposes pipelines and energy production here in Canada. His policy on housing is the same as Trudeau's, building up monstrous bureaucracies in Ottawa. His latest is a $35 billion government construction company, which is going to build prefab tiny homes with no driveways. What could possibly go wrong? Building up housing bureaucracies in Ottawa has doubled housing costs during the lost Liberal decade. And giving Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney a fourth term will only make it worse. Then there's crime. Mark Carney supports the entire radical catch-and-release, hug-a-thug criminal justice policy that has turned our streets into war zones in many of our biggest cities. He supports the distribution of tax-funded drugs, and he continues to stand by the entire Liberal agenda of the last decade. If you want to know what the Liberals will do with a fourth term, look what they did with the last 10 years. If you want to know what I'll do, look what I've been saying for the last 10 years. It hasn't changed. I have said exactly the same thing for the last 10 years, and it turns out that the things we must do to counter Donald Trump are all the things I said we should be doing before he even threatened the tariffs.
And the more that I think about this, the more that I read about all of this and the different stances of the two countries, it really just reiterates to me that the stance the Liberals and Mark Carney have taken against Donald Trump, painting him as an enemy, makes so much sense. Could this potentially be a little conspiratorial? Maybe, but there's a lot of evidence and documentation to support this, because I don't think necessarily that Mark Carney and the Liberals view Donald Trump as an actual threat to Canada's sovereignty, as they keep saying, or an actual threat to our economy, as they keep saying. I think that they view Donald Trump much more as a threat to their entire globalist plot. And that could be why, when Donald Trump announces yesterday that, Canada's not getting hit with any more tariffs than we already previously were, we're pretty much in the clear on that front, why Mark Carney is so disheveled, because he built his entire campaign around Donald Trump is the bad guy because he's tariffing us. Not Donald Trump is the bad guy because he is going against where all of my investments and assets and where my ideology lies, because obviously that wouldn't win him an election, right?
So President Trump has just announced a series of measures that are going to fundamentally change the international trading system. Now, in doing so, he has preserved a number of important elements of our relationship, the commercial relationship between Canada and the United States. So we're in a situation where there is going to be an impact on the U.S. economy, which will build with time. In our judgment, it will be negative on the U.S. economy. That will have an impact on us. But the series of measures will directly affect millions of Canadians. We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy.
The big problem here, though, is that you cannot build a strong economy in Canada overnight. And our politicians have been flying all around the world for trips to diversify our trade for over a decade. And our trade in those regions, such as Europe, has not increased pretty much at all. The U.S. is still the number one driving force for us. And Mark Carney refuses, as Pierre Poilievre said, to repeal any of those job-killing, growth-killing measures.
As I said, Canadians have the right to know what red lines I will draw in order to protect our country in these inevitable negotiations that any future Prime Minister will have and have quickly. So let me be clear. First, I will protect our control over our border, our security, our resources, our farmers, including our supply-managed farmers, our fresh water, our automotive workers. Also, we will protect our sovereignty. For years, the Americans have demanded we do more in defense. But the truth is, Canadians have been demanding exactly the same thing. And so I will commit that any extra revenue generated from expanded trade with the United States will go right into our armed forces. We will hit our 2%. We will take back control of our Arctic waters from the Chinese and the Russians. We will rebuild our military and will become a truly sovereign nation with a strong armed forces that can protect us.
It is really the most insane thing to me to hear Mark Carney talk about building the best, strongest economy ever, when he literally is the person behind so many of these things that have hurt our economy. He advised the Trudeau government for 5 years on paper that we know of that put us in this mess. He welcomed back the exact same freaking cabinet that Trudeau had that put us in this mess. How dare you say that you're going to be the guy who's going to fix our economy? We're going to have an economy stronger than the USA. How? Oh, well, by having more social programs, by using your tax dollars even more, by making sure that we now have an invisible carbon tax on industries. That's how. Not a single one of those things is providing relief to anybody. The only plans he has released, really, outside of the 1% lowest bracket income tax cut, Outside of that, the only things he has proposed are things that are costing the taxpayer more. That's it. He wants to add more bureaucracy. He wants more climate regulations. It's going to be the best thing ever for us. No, it will not. The science is there. The data is there. Stop trying to make it happen. It is not going to happen. Also, side note, I totally forgot that Jagmeet Singh even existed these last couple of days, but wow, he popped up in my algorithm today. Here's what Jagmeet Singh's plan is, okay?
To boycott American products. They're picking up items at the shelf and saying, wait a second, is this Canadian or is this American? They are canceling their trips to the United States.
I have never once gone to the grocery store and specifically looked at where something is made, for the record. I just buy whatever is most affordable, which often leads me to buying whatever no-name product there is. Are those Canadian? I don't even know. And also, people are boycotting the United States and canceling their trips, one, because of your propaganda, and two, because they literally can't afford it.
And I want to commend Canadians for showing that resilience and that defiance and say, you know what, I'm going to fight back. I'm going to defend my country. I'm going to fight back and protect our home. And so I want to give Canadians another chance to do that, another chance to contribute. When Canadians are looking for ways, what can I do? Well, here's something that you can do. We are announcing New Democrats will bring in a victory bond, like we did in the World War. This is an opportunity for Canadians to invest in our country. In fact, during the World War, victory bonds raised more revenue than taxes because Canadians were so committed to doing their part. So right now, for Canadians who are wondering, how can I contribute? A victory bond would be a guaranteed investment where you would purchase a bond, a 5-year or 10-year, and if you hold it to maturity, you would get all the revenue tax-free. So it's a way to, we're going to need to raise money to be able to build the roads, the bridges, the infrastructure we need. Instead of relying solely on banks and paying debt and interest to those banks, let's pay interest to Canadians instead. And so I'm inviting Canadians to do their part, and this would be a way to do so.
First and foremost, tell me you're broke without telling me. Secondly, I'm about to go off here. Buddy, we already pay taxes. Our taxes already fund all of that stuff, or at least it is supposed to. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jagmeet Singh, for highlighting the absolute waste, fraud, corruption, and BS of the Liberal government, which you propped up for the last 10 flippin' years. Thank you for reminding all Canadians why it is so imperative that we vote Conservative to get rid of all of you so that you all lose your ridings and you get out of our lives, because you have destroyed our lives. You have destroyed our prosperity, our hope, our future. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Singh. This is so unbelievably embarrassing, by the way, because even as an example, victory bonds were used during the World Wars, both 1 and 2. And let's just throw this out there. During the First World War, the 1917, I believe, they had introduced the federal income tax. However, that tax was only charged to the wealthiest people in society, not everybody else. Then we had victory bonds in World War II, and we also had tax hikes where taxes now applied to absolutely everybody. And this is absolutely absurd when you compare the amount of tax dollars y'all have been getting for the last number of decades, because taxes, while introduced as a temporary measure, were here to stay, and they get increased almost every single year. And you have been collecting that money without there being these crazy economic crises. So what the hell have you been doing with it? And let's not forget that they have been collecting our money to fund all of those things that he listed, by the way, for decades. And by the way, the average Canadian, when you factor in what is taken off of your paycheck, if you're lucky enough to have a job these days, that goes to the government, be it in taxes, in mandatory contributions for government programs, and then also what you pay in taxes on every single thing that you buy, because apparently taking upwards of 50% of your income when all is said and done was still not enough. They're going to make sure that they still get that 7 cents, that 16 cents, 15 cents, 13, I don't know. I forget what it is in every province. Either way, you could literally be spending your last dollar and the government is still going to tax you on it. And then they want you to feel like they are your hero. They are your false prophet because they've offered you $10 a day daycare. Yeah, you should be really grateful for them for that, and the billions of dollars that they taxed you and your entire country and your community that put you in a position where you absolutely needed to rely on that. If there was anything that the federal government, Liberal and NDP, has taught us in recent years, it's that they are horrific at spending money, Mark Carney included. Oh, he may be some sort of a central banker, but he's been advising them. So, clearly he doesn't know the economy at all, and clearly he doesn't care about you. But despite all of that, it appears as though the fix is in and Mark Carney is winning the election.
As well, what was also progress in the call the President and I had last week is this agreement that we will sit down, future Prime Minister and him as President will sit down and begin negotiations on the overall economic and security partnership with Canada.
And if you want even more proof as to why exactly it is that Donald Trump would be in support of Mark Carney, it's because of everything else that we've talked about in this episode and how Mark Carney is going to cripple us for no reason other than his own ideological stance that has a lot of evidence to show it does not work.
And just yesterday, Mark Carney gave a wonderful gift to Donald Trump. He announced he will keep the Liberal No New Pipelines Law C-69 in place. Bill C-69 guarantees there will never again be a pipeline, LNG plant, large-scale mine, or nuclear project built in this country. It will send hundreds of billions of dollars fleeing south of the border to Trump's America and force us to continue to sell our oil and gas at massive price discounts. When you consider that Mark Carney's Keep It in the Ground agenda will make us even more dependent on the United States, it becomes pretty clear why Trump wants the Liberals to win a fourth term.
And you wonder why Mark Carney, the Liberals, and even the NDP in their pathetic campaign has been about nothing other than creating fear with Donald Trump, that he is the bad guy. Why would they want to distract you? Could it maybe be because it's their fault, actually? Why on earth would they have their federally funded propaganda machines only scrutinizing the conservatives? Oh, security clearance. Ooh. And never them.
Good morning.
Hi, Abigail Beeman, CTV News. Your party has dropped 4 candidates in 2 days. How can Canadians be convinced of your vetting process for people you believe are fit to govern this country? And here in Kingston, how does that vetting process extend to Mr. Patterson for his previous connection to a church that supported conversion therapy?
Well, first of all, you omitted from your question that Mr. Patterson renounced conversion therapy years ago. And so the question is not accurate. Secondly, our vetting process is stronger than all the other parties. That's why we have a zero tolerance for anyone who acts unacceptably. This is the exact opposite of what we saw from Mr. Carney, who tried to keep on as a candidate someone who had asked for his conservative opponent to be handed over to the Chinese Communist government on a bounty, to be imprisoned or maybe murdered, because he was a dissident against that government. Mr. Carney said that it was a teachable moment. He's right. It taught all of us that Mark Carney will never put Canada first. He sold out. He went to China to get a $250 million loan from the Chinese government while he was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. He met with top officials in the central bank. He met with the mayor of Beijing. He built his own profit off of compromising himself and his company. He still has those compromises because he has money, untold millions, invested in Brookfield that owes all of this money still to the government in Beijing. So how are we going to know when he's acting for Canada rather than acting for his bottom line? And that's why I reiterate my call. Your question was about vetting. Well, Canadians should be able to vet Mark Carney's conflicts of interest by having him publish all of his financial interests so that Canadians know what interests he has that go against Canada's national interests. After the lost Liberal decade of selling out our economy, driving away our resources, taxing away our jobs, we can't afford to give Liberals a fourth term. We need a new Conservative government that will bring home the jobs to this country so we can stand up for ourselves with in a position of strength for a change. Thank you.
And Pierre Poilievre was on Ben Mulrooney's show yesterday, and he spoke quite brilliantly about this issue of the security clearance, which, I mean, clearly, if the security clearance is such a good thing that's going to help protect us, this scandal within the Liberal Party is another example of exactly why the security clearance that they're trying to make a big deal is simply not a big deal and clearly isn't protecting anybody, actually. In fact, you have people who are knowingly contributing to some pretty awful things. And it's okay. They don't even get a slap on the wrist. They get well, he said he was sorry, so it's okay. We forgive him. But here is what Pierre Poilievre had to say about that.
Once and for all, the situation with your security clearance.
Well, first of all, I've already had the clearance. I was a minister in a cabinet, so I've already been cleared. Secondly, what the Liberals have been trying to get me to do is sign an oath of secrecy so that I can't speak publicly about foreign interference without their permission, to get locked in to an oath of confidentiality, so that when an issue of foreign interference comes up, I have to risk criminal prosecution if I say something the government considers that it has briefed me on, even if I might have said it anyway. And the other day, example, I had to speak out because a Liberal candidate had said that he wanted to turn over a Conservative candidate on a bounty to the Chinese embassy, which would then send him back to China and potentially imprison or kill him. And I talked about how Mr. Carney, for example, took a $250 million loan from the Chinese government for his company just 6 months ago. Would that kind of comment have been captured by the confidentiality rules that go around getting these security clearance briefings? It might be, but the reality is I will get the briefings I need when I'm Prime Minister to protect our country against foreign interference.
The news cycle is quite literally never a dull moment these days. So be sure to subscribe, follow wherever it is that you are watching today's episode of Over Opinionated. I'm Jasmine Lane. I'm honestly thinking about doing some sort of like a things we missed segment, maybe once a week, where I use all of the stories that I had taken notes of things that are going on that just didn't happen to fit and flow into a full-length episode. It'll definitely be a random mix of stories of the week, I suppose, that are just kind of random and don't cohesively fit together in any way, shape, or form. But if you're interested in something like that, I have a lot of notes of different things that I'd love to talk about that just don't always make it in to a 20 to 25 minute long episode. Again, be sure to subscribe, follow, like, share, comment your thoughts down below, and I will talk to you tomorrow.